Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere the wind never stops talking. The sky is impossibly wide, and the horizon looks like it's been drawn with a ruler. You're standing in the Mongol steppe at dawn, inside a drafty little yurt that has all the insulation of a wicker basket. The air inside smells faintly of wool and last night's fire, which has given up on life and left you with a bitter, cold trace of ash in the air. You rub your eyes, feeling the stiffness in your fingers. Outside, there's frost clinging to your boots like a desperate ex who just can't let go. And the grass crunches underfoot in a way that makes you instantly regret not putting on thicker socks. A pale sun is sliding over the edge of the world, throwing a light so thin it feels like it could be torn in half by the next gust. You probably won't survive this if you're not dressed right, but here, a Mongol postal worker, and you've got places to be. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you can, post your location and the local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start the morning with the usual ritual. Shake out your boots to check for anything that might have decided to move in overnight. A mouse, maybe, or something more adventurous, like a cricket with big dreams. The smell of smoke from other yurts drifts past, carrying the tang of dried dung burning, because out here, wood is rarer than a polite goat. Your diary is already open on the small, low table. A few notes from yesterday sit there and smudged. Ink, cold. Wind, angry. Horse, also angry. Eat. You pick up the brush, dip it in the small clay pot of ink, and add a new line. Boots stiff with frost. Fingers slower than horses. It's a simple record, but it's yours. And one day, some overly curious historian might pore over it, wondering why so many entries mention the wind's attitude. Outside, your horse, well, technically, today's first horse waits with a look that says, "We're doing this again?" She's a sturdy steppe pony, the kind that can run for hours and still find enough energy to glare at you when you tighten the girth strap. Her breath plumes in the cold, and for a second, you both just stand there, watching it drift away, like you're sharing a moment of mutual complaint. Historically, Mongol postal workers, part of the famed Yam system, were the arteries of an empire that stretched from the Pacific to the Black Sea. The Khans relied on riders like you to carry orders, news, and occasionally very weird packages to every corner of their realm. You are, in a way, the medieval equivalent of a Wi-Fi signal act, slower, colder, and with significantly more horsehair in your mouth. You sling the small satchel of letters over your shoulder, feeling the weight of messages that might be anything from tax records to awkward love notes written by nervous court scribes. Historians still argue whether the average postal worker was more valued for speed or for discretion. Either way, the moment you step outside the warmth of the yurt, and warmth here is generous. You're on the clock. The steppe greets you with a wind that doesn't just blow, interrogates. It asks, "Why are you here? Do you even like this job?" Your cloak flaps so hard it could take flight, and you squint against the glare bouncing off the frosted grass. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf barks, sharp and brief, like it's reminding you it exists but doesn't have time for a full conversation. You mount up, settling into the saddle that's seen more miles than you care to count. The first stretch of road is more suggestion than path, marked by a couple of leaning wooden posts and the faint memory of wagon tracks. Your pony starts at a steady trot, the kind that jostles your teeth just enough to make you reconsider the concept of breakfast. In your diary, you'll later note the feel of this moment, the way the light cuts through the morning haze, the faint crunch of frozen grass under hooves, and the smell of the leather reins warming in your hands. And you might even add a side note about the way your scarf keeps trying to escape up your nose. Because some details are too irritating not to record, your mind drifts to the stories you've heard from other riders. Some say that in summer, the grass rolls like waves in the wind, and the air is thick with the scent of wildflowers and dust. Others claim the winters can freeze your eyelashes together if you stand still too long. You suspect both are true, but right now, it's just you, the pony, and the slow rise of the sun over a world that feels endless. A fox darts across the trail ahead, its red fur catching the morning light for a heartbeat before it vanishes into the grass. You consider jotting that down in the diary, later partly because it's rare to see a fox this early, and partly because it'll make future readers think your job was just a series of charming wildlife encounters instead of a constant battle. With Windburn, you settle into the rhythm of the ride, the steady beat of hooves matching your breath. Out here, time doesn't pass in minutes or hours, it passes in landmarks. A crooked tree, a stretch of black rock, a frozen stream you'll need to cross before it thaws. Somewhere ahead, the first outpost waits with a fresh horse and maybe, if you're lucky, a cup of warm goat milk. For now, you press on, the vast steppe opening in every direction, the horizon always just out of reach. You make a mental note for the diary: sky large enough to hold all the world's secrets. Horse unimpressed. The first outpost comes into view like a mirage, two low wooden structures, huddled against the wind. A tethering post for horses, and smoke curling lazily from a chimney. You guide your pony toward it, the satchel of scrolls and parcels knocking lightly against your side. The frost still clings to your boots, but the sun has managed to pull a faint warmth into the air. The kind that tricks you into thinking you might not freeze later. The station keeper, a man whose face looks like it was carved by the same wind that sweeps this steppe, greets you with a nod. No grand welcome, just the silent exchange of someone who's been expecting you since yesterday. He disappears inside the small office and reappears with a bundle of fresh dispatches wrapped in oiled leather to keep out snow and rain. You untie your satchel and begin the ritual of sorting outgoing messages in one pile. Incoming ones in another. Some scrolls carry the con seal pressed deep into crimson wax, its impression still sharp, as if to remind you that these words are more important than you are. Others are marked with less formal seals, traders' emblems, clan symbols, or occasionally just a smudge of soot where someone didn't have the proper tools. One package catches your eye knot for its size, which is small, but for the faint. Perfume that seeps through the wrapping. You jot a note in your diary. Parcel smells like flowers. Unusual. Will not sniff to long learn my lesson last time. You still remember the incident with the perfumed letter that turned out to have been stored next to salted fish for a week. The first dispatch of the day is bound for a garrison post about 40 miles away. It's a small, thin roll of parchment, but the weight of its message is unknown to you. Part of the job is never knowing. Historians still argue whether Mongol couriers were deliberately kept ignorant of their cargo's contents to maintain secrecy, or whether most simply preferred not to ask. You fall firmly in the don't ask camp. Curiosity only slows the ride. You tuck the dispatch into the inner pocket of your coat, where it will stay warm against your body heat. The cold can stiffen parchment, making it brittle, and no one wants to explain to the Khan why a letter arrived in flakes. The station keeper pours you a cup of Timor goat milk than actual tea. The leaves floating like tiny green boats in a pale sea. You sip it slowly, letting the warmth seep through your chilled hands. In your diary, you make a quick entry. Tea strong enough to wake ancestors. Good. She's a compact bay mare with a coat, so glossy it almost glows in the sun. You give her a quick, once-over-leg sound, eyes clear, ears twitching with the faintest suspicion. Horses here are like colleagues. Some you ride icily, others require a slow build of mutual tolerance, and a few will spend the entire journey plotting your demise. You tighten the straps, check the satchel, and mount up. The mare steps forward with a readiness that surprises you. Either she likes you, or she just wants to get wherever she's going, so she can be rid of you as you leave the outpost behind. The land opens again. The track narrows between two low ridges, and the wind shifts, bringing the scent of smoke from some unseen camp. You think about the hands that wrote the letters you carry. Somewhere, a court official hunched over a desk, scratching ink onto parchment by lamplight. Somewhere else, a merchant wrapped a small packet in silk, tying the knot with a prayer for safe delivery. Your diary will get a line about this, something like, "Letters feel heavier when you imagine the faces of the senders." Mare, unimpressed. Halfway to the next relay, you pass a lone shepherd. His sheep move like a single woolly tide, spilling across the slope. He raises a hand in greeting, and you return it, neither of you speaking. The steppe doesn't encourage chatter unless it's necessary. The mare keeps her pace steady, hooves making a rhythmic thud against the hard ground. Your thoughts start to drift. Maybe you'll write about the way the morning sun has softened into a buttery light, casting long shadows of the grass. Or maybe you'll note how the mare's ears flick forward whenever a bird cuts across the sky. Details matter in a diary not because anyone else will read them, but because it's how you'll remember. By the time the next ridge flattens into open plain, the garrison is visible in the distance, a cluster of yurts around a low stone watchtower. You know the guards here, they always want news from the capital, even if it's just gossip about who tripped over a carpet in the Khan's court. You pat the mare's neck, promising her an early rest, and make a mental note. First dispatch delivered. No delays. Mare still suspicious, but cooperative. The garrison's watchtower looms taller as you ride closer, its stones weathered into a kind of permanent squint against the wind. At the base, a pair of guards straighten at your approach, their heavy coats creaking with the sound of stiff leather and frost-stiffened seams. You rein in the mare, feeling her sides heave gently. She's not tired yet, but she appreciates the pause. One of the guards steps forward and takes the reins, the other already reaching for the satchel. You pull out the scroll with the con seal, holding it with both hands like it's a fragile egg. They don't rush you, but you can sense the curiosity itching in their fingers. The scroll disappears into a small side door, no doubt to be opened in a room warmer than this. In your diary, you jot, "Garrison, appreciative of news. Faces less frostbitten than mine. Suspect better boots." It's not a complaint exactly, but you note it anyway. Future. You will want to remember that the boots at this post are apparently superior. You're offered a seat by a low brazier, the glowing coals sending up a faint scent of charred dung and pine needles. Someone ladles you a thin broth from a pot, floating with a few mysterious leaves and one suspiciously round dumpling. You taste its mostly salt and heat, which is enough to make you sigh in contentment. While you eat, you swap the mare for a fresh horse. This one's a gray gelding with a mane that seems determined to go in several directions at once. His eyes have the lazy, half-closed look of a creature who's seen enough of the steppe to know it's not worth getting excited about. The garrison commander comes in, a tall man with a beard that could conceal an entire nest of sparrows. Asks casually if there's been any word from the Western Front. You shrugged, the universal sign of the postal worker who knows, but isn't about to start sharing specifics. Historians still argue whether writers leaked information on purpose, or if most simply avoided gossip to protect themselves. In your case, it's simple. Fewer words mean fewer chances to accidentally say the wrong thing. You do, however, share a harmless tidbits, something about a wedding in the capital, and the ridiculous hat worn by the groom's uncle. That gets a chuckle, and the commander claps you on the back hard enough to jostle the broth in your stomach. You make a mental note. Story about wedding hats, good for morale. The next leg of your route follows the famed yam network, the artery that keeps the empire's messages flowing. Relay stations are spaced roughly every 25 to 40 miles, and each is stocked with horses, food, and shelter for the riders. You've heard the more romantic couriers describe it as a lifeline across the steppe. You describe it more as an endless chain of places to change horses and maybe not freeze. You set off again, the gelding's gait smoother than expected. The wind shifts behind you, pushing faintly at your back, which is about as friendly as the weather ever gets here. To your left, the plain stretches until it fades into a haze, the grass rippling in slow, tired waves. To your right, low hills rise in gentle folds, dotted with the black shapes of grazing yaks. You think about what you'll write later. Wind companionable today, gelding tolerable, sky doing its best impression of forever. At the halfway point to the next station, you pass another courier coming from the opposite direction. There's a brief pause as you both slow to exchange news, not of the empire, but of the road itself. He warns you of ice near the western ford. You tell him the eastern ridge is clear, but windy. This is the kind of intelligence riders, actually. Trade, practical, unglamorous, and worth far more than political gossip. When you're on horseback, in the middle of nowhere, your gelding snorts, tossing his head as if to say, "You've lingered too long." You give the other rider a quick nod, and you're both on your way again, your paths diverging like threads in a tapestry. By late afternoon, the next relay comes into sight, another pair of low buildings, the tethering post, and the eternal curl of smoke from a chimney. You can almost smell the tea already. You'll change horses again, but before you do, you'll pull out your diary and add a line. 3 relays down, many to go. Hands still attached despite Frost's best efforts.